of the law is hereby declared the winner.
Now, imagine fighting an election against the party controlling the federal government of Nigeria. Imagine fighting a political machine with enormous resources, influence, and power. Imagine telling your people to defend their votes because the election is bigger than you, because it is about whether their votes will actually count. And then imagine winning. Winning because the people stood their ground. Winning because the people refused to surrender their mandate. Winning despite everything that was thrown at you. You would think that the first thing you would do after such a victory would be to celebrate the people who gave you that mandate. You would think you would say, this victory belongs to the people. But then something happened that left many Nigerians asking a very uncomfortable question. Immediately after winning re-election in Osun State, Governor Ademola Adeleke reaffirmed his support for Bola Tinubu's re-election in 2027. And his reason? Tinubu is an Osun son. So here is the question. What exactly did the people of Osun fight for? Because if the people can fight to make their votes count at home, while their governor simultaneously supports the continuation of a government they may believe is making their lives harder, then we have to ask whether Nigerian politicians actually understand what the people's mandate means. And this is where Adeleke's victory becomes much bigger than Adeleke. It becomes a story about Nigerian politics itself. Osun just sent a very powerful message. Let us first acknowledge what happened in Osun. Ademola Adeleke has been re-elected governor of Osun State. He contested this election on the platform of the Accord Party and defeated the APC candidate, Bola Tinubu. INEC declared Adeleke the winner with 511,067 votes. And this was not just another governorship election. The APC came into this election with the enormous advantage of being the ruling party at the federal level. There had been intense political mobilization around the election, and the contest had become a test of whether the APC could reclaim Osun. There were also serious concerns before the election about the influence of political power, security, and integrity of the electoral process. But when the votes were counted, Adeleke won. And that matters a lot, because for Nigerians who have become increasingly cynical about elections, Osun has provided a reason to believe that the people's vote can still make a difference. It says something very important. Political power is not necessarily the same thing as electoral power. You can control the federal government, all right? You can even have the machinery of a powerful political party behind you. But ultimately, voters still have the ability to say no. And that is why opposition politicians are already talking about Osun as a possible warning to the ruling party ahead of 2027. Now, let me tell you why Adeleke's victory is so symbolic. For years, Nigerians have watched elections become increasingly transactional. Vote buying, intimidation, political thuggery, manipulation, the use of government resources, the desperation to control electoral institutions, and perhaps most importantly, the belief that once a political party controls enough machinery, the outcome of an election can be predetermined. Whether every allegation is proven in every election is another matter, but the perception is real, and that perception is dangerous because democracy cannot survive if ordinary citizens believe that their vote is worthless. That is why what happened in Osun is so important. The message from the electorate was essentially, you may have the power, but we still have the vote. That is a beautiful part of this story, but unfortunately, that is also where Adeleke's story becomes complicated. Because after winning a mandate that many people will interpret as a victory for the people's democratic choice, Adeleke turned around and reaffirmed his support for President Bola Tinubu's second-term bid.
At this point, I must deeply appreciate Mr. President, His Excellency, Senator Bola Tinubu, for his strong support for a free and fair election. Mr. President is a son of Osun State, and I hereby reaffirmed my earlier endorsement of him for a second term in the 2027 presidential election.
And this is where I have a problem with Adeleke. Let us be very clear. Adeleke has every constitutional right to support whoever he wants. He can support Tinubu, Atiku, Obi. He can support anyone. That is politics. But as citizens, we also have the right to ask why. Why should a governor who has just benefited from the determination of voters to make their votes count endorse the continuation of a federal government that many Nigerians are deeply unhappy with? And Adeleke's explanation makes this even more interesting. He described Tinubu as an Osun son. And this is precisely where Nigerian politics becomes uncomfortable. Because what happens when tribal or religious loyalty becomes more important than performance? What happens when a politician looks at the president and says, "He is my brother," instead of asking, "Has he served Nigeria well?" What happens when geography becomes more important than governance? What happens when being Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, Fulani, Niger Delta, or anything else becomes a political qualification? That is not democracy. That is identity politics. And it is one of the reasons Nigeria continues to struggle. Here's the reality that politicians sometimes forget. The ordinary Nigerian doesn't wake up in the morning and eat ethnicity for breakfast. The ordinary Nigerian wakes up and worries about the price of food. They worry about rent. They worry about electricity, about transport, about school fees. They worry about healthcare. They worry about whether their salary can survive until the end of the month. That is if they get the salary. They worry about jobs. They worry about insecurity. They worry about the future of their children. And when those Nigerians go to the polling station, they should not be asking, "Is this candidate Yoruba?" They should be asking, "Will this person make my life better?" That is what democracy is supposed to be about. It's about performance, accountability, competence, character, policies, results, and not "he is our son." And this is the hypocrisy we must talk about. This is the part that makes Adeleke's endorsement particularly difficult to swallow. During the Osun election, the argument was essentially that the people had a right to choose their governor. The people should defend their votes. The people should not allow anybody to steal their mandate. Beautiful. I agree completely. But democracy cannot stop at Osun State's borders. The same principle should apply to Nigeria as well. If the people of Osun have the right to choose the governor they want, then Nigerians have the right to choose the president they want. And that choice should not be determined by whether the candidate is an Osun son. It should be determined by whether that candidate has earned another 4 years. That is the question Adeleke should be asking. Not, "Is Tinubu one of us?" but, "Is Tinubu good for Nigeria?" Those are two completely different questions. And there is another possibility. Now, to be fair to Adeleke, perhaps this is simply political pragmatism. But he understands that politics is about relationships. Maybe he believes maintaining a good relationship with the federal government is beneficial to Osun State. Maybe he believes Tinubu's administration has performed better than its critics acknowledge. Maybe he genuinely believes Tinubu deserves another term. Those are legitimate political positions. And his camp has reportedly denied his support is the result of a political agreement with Tinubu. So, we should not automatically conclude that Adeleke has secretly traded his political support for something. But that still leaves us with the fundamental question. What is the basis of the endorsement? If it is performance, tell Nigerians. If it is economic policy, explain it. If it is development, show us the evidence. If it is because Tinubu is an Osun son, then Nigerians have every right to challenge that reasoning. Because Nigerians are suffering, and political loyalty should never be more important than the welfare of the people. Adeleke's victory may actually be bigger than Adeleke himself. And this is why I think we should separate those two things. Adeleke's victory is one thing. Adeleke's endorsement of Tinubu is another thing. The first may represent something genuinely encouraging about Nigerian democracy, but the second represents something deeply frustrating about Nigerian politics. The people can vote against a political machine, but politicians can still operate according to the calculations that have very little to do with the interests of the wider population. And that is the contradiction. The people may be saying, "We want our votes to count," while politicians are saying, "Yes, your votes should count, but when the election is over, we will make our own political calculations." That is precisely why Nigerians must become more politically mature. We must stop treating politicians as heroes. Adeleke is not a hero because he defeated the APC. Tinubu is not a hero because he is Yoruba. Peter Obi is not a hero because he is Igbo. Atiku is not a hero because he is Northern. Nobody should receive political loyalty simply because of where they come from. They should earn it. So, what does Osun mean for 2027? The most important lesson from Osun may not actually be about Adeleke, it may be about the voter. Because if Nigerians go into 2027 with the same determination to defend their votes, then the political class may discover something very uncomfortable. The Nigerian voter is not as powerless as politicians think. The outcome of Osun shows that elections can still produce surprises. It shows that incumbency does not automatically guarantee victory. It shows that a powerful political machine can be defeated. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds Nigerians that democracy only works when citizens participate and defend it. But there is also a warning. Don't allow politicians to turn your democracy victory into another tribal victory. Don't allow somebody to tell you, vote for him because he is our son. Instead, ask, what has he done? What will he do? Has my life improved? Can I trust this person with another 4 years? That should be the standard. So here are my final thoughts on this topic. Governor Ademola Adeleke fought hard for the people's mandate in Osun, and the people gave him that mandate. For that reason, his victory deserves to be celebrated as a reminder that Nigerian voters can still make their voices heard. But Adeleke must understand something. The mandate belongs to the people. It does not belong to him. And the people who gave him that mandate are not only Yoruba people. They are Nigerians. So when he endorses a presidential candidate for 2027, the question should not be whether that candidate is an Osun son. The question should be, what kind of Nigeria will that candidate give us? Because the Nigerian people are the ones who will live with the consequences, not the politicians, not their families, not their political godfathers. It is the people. And that is why Adeleke's endorsement of Tinubu after winning an election against Tinubu's APC creates such a painful contradiction. He fought Tinubu's APC to get the people's mandate, but now he appears willing to support the continuation of the very government whose policies many Nigerians say have made their lives harder. Maybe Adeleke has a perfectly good explanation. If he does, Nigerians deserve to hear it. Because in a democracy, politicians don't owe us tribal loyalty. They owe us accountability. And perhaps that is the real lesson from Osun. The people must stop asking which politician belongs to their tribe. They must start asking who belongs to the people. And in 2027, that may be the most important question of all. What do you think? Was Adeleke right to reaffirm his support for Tinubu? Or should a governor who has just received the people's mandate put the national interest above ethnic and political loyalty? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe Nigerian politics should be about performance, accountability, and the people, not tribe and ethnicity, subscribe to the channel. Because 2027 is coming, and this time, the people really must count. Thank you for watching.